For 7 long years, Lily Hale had never spoken a single word, not to her teachers, not to her father, not to anyone. Doctors called it a mystery. Therapists called it impossible. But one ordinary afternoon, her millionaire father walked in and caught his silent little girl doing something that would shatter everything he thought he knew about her, singing with the new nanny. It was a bright but quiet morning in the sprawling mansion of Jonathan Hale, a self-made millionaire whose life was a picture-perfect image of success, at least from the outside. Tall, with streaks of silver in his hair and eyes sharp enough to spot a flaw in any business deal, Jonathan had built an empire in the tech world. Yet behind the polished steel gates and marble floors, his life at home was anything but perfect. Jonathan's 7-year-old daughter, Lily, had not spoken a single word in her life. Doctors had examined her endlessly. Therapists had tried every method. Specialists assured Jonathan that Lily's silence wasn't due to any physical condition. It was emotional. Some even called it selective mutism, triggered by deep trauma. But no one could pinpoint the exact cause. Jonathan blamed himself. His wife, Emma, had died in a tragic car accident when Lily was only 3. He had buried himself in work, convinced that providing the best money could buy was enough. But the truth was, the house had grown cold, and Lily had withdrawn deeper into her quiet world. She spent her days sketching in her room or wandering silently through the halls, her soft golden hair falling into her face, her bright blue eyes avoiding everyone's gaze. Jonathan had gone through dozens of nannies, each one leaving after a few weeks when they realized caring for a child who wouldn't speak, smile, or even look at them was more than they could handle. That was until Grace arrived. Grace was unlike anyone Jonathan had hired before. She was in her late 30s, tall and strong, with deep brown skin and a voice that carried warmth like sunlight. She wore colorful dresses, laughed easily, and had a quiet strength about her. She didn't seem intimidated by the mansion's grandeur or by Jonathan's stern demeanor. When he interviewed her, she had looked him straight in the eye and said, "I can't promise I'll make her talk, Mr. Hale, but I can promise I'll make her feel safe." Something in her tone made him hire her on the spot. From the very first day, Grace didn't push Lily. She didn't ask her endless questions or beg her to speak. Instead, she simply existed near her, cooking in the kitchen while humming old soul songs, folding laundry in the living room while Lily colored quietly on the couch. Grace spoke to her as if she were listening and responding, never treating her like a problem to solve. First, Lily ignored her, the same way she had ignored everyone else. But over the next few weeks, something began to shift. Jonathan noticed Lily spending more time in the kitchen when Grace was cooking. He saw her eyes following Grace's hands as she worked, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly when Grace laughed. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Jonathan had left work early that day. He walked through the front door, expecting the usual silence that filled the mansion like a heavy fog. But instead, he heard something strange. A voice. Soft, warm, singing. He froze, his heart pounding. The melody floated down the hallway, something sweet and soulful. He followed the sound, step by step, until he reached the slightly open door to Lily's playroom. And that's when he saw it. Grace was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her head tilted back, singing an old lullaby. And there, right in front of her, sat Lily, her tiny voice joining in, shaky at first but clear. Her eyes were lit up in a way Jonathan had never seen. Her lips moved with each word, her voice blending with Grace's in a fragile, beautiful harmony. Jonathan couldn't breathe. It was the first time he had ever heard his daughter's voice. When the song ended, Lily giggled, an actual giggle, and Grace smiled at her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Jonathan stepped into the room, his eyes stinging. "Lily," he whispered. She looked up at him, startled, but instead of shutting down, she simply tilted her head and said, for the first time, "Hi, Daddy." The sound broke him. He knelt on the floor, pulling her into his arms, unable to stop the tears. Grace watched quietly, her own eyes glistening, but she gave them their moment. Over the next days and weeks, Lily's voice became more and more a part of the house. She didn't talk all the time, but when she did, it was like music. She'd hum while drawing, sing softly while Grace cooked, and sometimes even chatter to Jonathan about small things, the shape of a cloud, The color of a flower, the story in a book. Jonathan, curious about what had broken the silence, finally asked Grace. What did you do? How did you get her to speak? Grace smiled. I didn't make her talk, Mr. Hale. I just gave her a reason to. Jonathan frowned slightly. A reason? Grace nodded. Children need to feel safe before they can open up. She needed to know. She was loved exactly as she is. I sang because music doesn't demand words. It just invites them. She decided on her own that she wanted to join in. Her words stayed with him. Months later, Jonathan made a decision that shocked his board of directors. He stepped down as CEO. The company could run without him. His daughter could not. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still quiet days, still moments where Lily retreated into herself. But the mansion was no longer cold. Grace had brought warmth back into their lives, and Jonathan realized she had saved not just his daughter, but him as well. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Lily curled up beside him, humming softly. Jonathan closed his eyes, listening. And for the first time in years, he felt at peace, because sometimes the most powerful healing doesn't come from doctors or money. It comes from a song, and someone who cares enough to sing it.